Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Joshua Monge, owner of Think, Adapt, Build, where innovation meets strategy to transform businesses into their best versions. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being here. Just to get started, let us know a little bit about who you are and how Think, Adapt, Build came to be and your reason for starting it in the first place.
Reason for starting it. It started with money. It was my family likes to eat and have a roof over their head. No, I'm just kidding.
There are those. That is a very important reason. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to remember why you get into these things. Oh, yeah. So let's start. So with Think, Adapt, Build, it's actually kind of a second version of what I was doing. Originally, in 2020, I left the Chamber of Commerce. I was the Director of Economic Development. I did that for 3 years. And I was supposed to walk into an operations position, 10 million in revenue for a manufacturing facility. And the people that brought me in there, they basically said, hey, listen, there's this COVID thing going on. We're going to put the position on hold. And so I found myself in transition without anywhere to go. And so I saw everybody going online, and I used to own a digital marketing agency. And so I started SEO business. Now, right, SEO business to operations. Don't worry, we're going to get there in about 2 seconds. Built the business up, got it to 6 figures in 18 months. And I basically had really strong operations, really focused on what I was doing. And a buddy of mine who was a fractional CFO caught up with me and said, hey, Joshua, you helped all these businesses before. You should do that again. And you should look at being an operations person, because everything you did at the chamber plus what you did with your own business, you should hang a shingle. And so I didn't know what that was, but did some research and I put together a fractional COO business, basically helping CEOs. I show up, help put the wheels back on the bus, help put the fires out and get people kind of structured and organized. And I've been doing that since 21 and I've really enjoyed it. So I'm a very operationally minded person. So
okay, yeah, I so we were talking earlier, and that's definitely, I feel you there. There's similar problems to solve. So you said you also grew 2 businesses before this.
I did. So the SEO business, it kept going, and so then now it's pivoted into a digital marketing service that's called BizBot Web, and it's another thing that I do. And I have a small team that helps me with both of those businesses. I don't recommend running 2 businesses for most people, but if you're up for the challenge and want the slow growth, by all means you can.
So what do those 2 other businesses teach you about this one now that you're running?
Oh my gosh. I would say, as much as Think, Adapt, Build, I want to say operations is the most important thing, because obviously that's my bias. But I think for a lot of businesses, proof of concept is the first thing. So do you actually have something that people want to buy? Are you able to clearly tell people what it is that you're able to do for them? And do they have the money for it? And does it make you happy? If you can figure that part out first and get the sales and kind of get the marketing piece figured out, then do that for a while. And then that's when operations becomes really important, because now you found a recipe that people like, you found a product or service that you're delivering that people want. And so when they keep doing that more and more, now you have to scale. That's where operations comes in and helps fill that gap.
Okay. So speaking from operations, now I usually, the podcast is Harvest to Pour, and I also like to think of Harvest to Pour as idea to execution.
I love that. Yeah. I
like the
double analogy there.
Yeah. And what part of this, your operations, do you believe it plays the most the part of the harvest to the pour, somewhere in the journey, or is it the full journey? Where does operations really come into play?
Yeah. It really comes into play with if you want a repetitive cycle. So once you figure out, I'm going to use your harvest to pour analogy. Once you figure out what you're actually growing, right? If you want to become more efficient in growing, then that's where operations can come in and help you with that. When it comes to the processes of harvesting and getting things effectively to where they need to be, again, that's operations. And if you want it repeatable and if you want cost savings, operations. And then pour, there's a whole process that you have to do to turn the raw product into a finished product. And so that whole process, if you, again, want to save money, become more efficient or scale, operations is really essential. And, I'll go toe to toe with any people to say it's the people that make it happen. But I would say at some point, it really is about processes, and you can limit your growth because you can add more people to the mix. But if they don't know what they're doing and it's not clearly defined and it's not repetitive, it's hard to grow just off people. Operations definitely becomes a key point there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the systems of the operations live under, and the people, you need those two to work together a little bit.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And I think that establishing a system that helps you, if your systems, support the people and to make it easier to do the operations, or even they have their buy-in towards developing that. Have you seen that make for better systems and operations?
Oh, definitely. I think when you have, for some people, when they're just getting started and they're building their business, they're bringing in people that have either knowledge or skills that they're missing. And so then they get to add to the kind of mix they have, or they're going to get people that are just executors. In both those situations, if you have executors, they need a clear description of what their job is, where they start, where they end, what permissions they have. And so that's an operational component that person gets to execute. And then when you have new talent coming in that's filling in gaps, what you'd like to do ideally is get the IP or the ideas or thoughts of how they're doing things actually transition into a documented process.
Yes.
So then if that person decides to move on or buys a job or something happens to them, you don't essentially lose a business function because that person's no longer there. You want to be able to make sure that that's documented and structured. Okay.
And do you find yourself auditing or reforming operations, or creating them from scratch most often?
Both.
Okay.
Sometimes you walk in and you're like, okay, what's the client intake process look like? Right. I mean, that's a common thing for almost any business. And people are like, oh, I don't know. It's been a while, So it's like, oh, you don't have a process. Okay, let's build that. And then I'm a big believer in continuous improvement. And so
yes,
even if you have a process, can it be more efficient? Can it run better? Can it run smoother? I'm a big believer in continuous improvement. And so basically you have a process or a system in place. Can it be ran more efficiently? Can it have cost savings, or is it repeatable and scalable? And so even though some things work, what's the old adage? Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Well, if it works, maybe it could work better. So there's
how can we improve this process? And
yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big believer in pulling on the knowledge that's already there to improve that. I don't have to come in and say, hey, you should do this. Usually it's within the company itself. The knowledge is you just help them get to it.
Yeah. And, everyone, I'm sure there's people that are listening right now that are concerned about AI or automation. And I would say, like this is the new competitive advantage when you look at how business runs is how are we incorporating AI or these automated processes? A really simple example of that is booking through like a program called Calendly. Now I don't even have to email back and forth and question and try to find times. I just send a little link to somebody and they pick a time on my calendar and it books. And I just took something that was, 3 days and a couple hours of people going back and forth. It gets done within just a few minutes. I mean, there's a small improvement that has compounding effect.
All right. Well, you mentioned a challenge when you came into a company. It's like, how is your customer acquisition? And they look at you blankly and go, well, we haven't thought about that in a while. They really don't have a system for it. Or maybe they do have a system for it, and it's just muscle memory for what the owner has done for several years. I've transitioned into a discussion we had earlier about the boomer generation transitioning out of their businesses and retiring and selling them to a younger generation. I am guessing that a lot of their systems and processes just exist up in their head because they've always done it that way. What concerns or challenges do you see for the younger generations coming in and purchasing and trying to, keep these businesses going as far as the handoff goes, and what their challenges are going to be running into when they do so?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because there is kind of what they are calling the gray wave. And it's the number of boomers that are looking to retire in the next 5-10 years. And, they built their businesses over several decades. And, the first question is it a business that can sell? If it's owner ran, owner managed, and owner centric, then essentially it's a job. And you have to ask yourself, like, why would I pay all this money for a job? It doesn't seem to make sense. So I think with those people kind of looking to transition when they're looking to try to sell their business, they need to really think like, can this run without me? If the answer is no, then you need to start building in a process and restructuring your organization and get people in and build the foundation of a business that can sell and can run without you. And that takes about 5 years. I mean, I talk to business brokers and other folks, when the day you think, oh, I want to get out of this. Okay, great. Now you've got a 5-year clock to get everything in order to actually be in a place to sell.
Yeah, that checks out. A lot of the business brokers and exit planners I've interviewed, the 5-year mark is when you start. Yeah, that you're like, you can't just say, I'm up, I'm done.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to it. Although a lot of people still come to them with, I'm done in a year and a half. What do I have to do?
Yeah. And, even like a car, right? Like, here's the car, here's the keys to the car, but it doesn't run unless you do this, and I'm the only one that knows it. Then you can't sell it. So I think just the number of businesses that are coming up for transition is alarming. And then this, and you have these communities that love these services. Like, this person is part of the community because of providing good service. They're leveraging the community by hiring people to work for them. And so you have all those components that are working together. And so when they go to make that transition and they can't, then the option is shut it down. And so I'm concerned because we're going to lose a bunch of small businesses in different communities. And in smaller communities, those are the only person that does it. So then, what's going to replace it? So I just think that's one part of the problem. The second problem is actually understanding what the workforce looks, or what the potential audience to buy those buildings, buy those businesses looks like. And I don't know that there's a little bit of a generational gap between the, boomers, Xers, and millennials. The millennials, like, do they have the money, time, energy, and experience to take that business on? And, you look at like priorities and how people were raised and kind of those elements. I mean, these are sweeping generalizations, by the way. Is the millennial generation ready to take on some of these boomer-based businesses? And then I think there's tons of opportunity because they can learn and they have access to way more resources. So that part is exciting. And then they can also tech enable these businesses. So I think there are definitely some hurdles to business ownership or these generational changes, but I think they can be overcome. And I think there's a reward system for them. So
yeah, that's exactly where I was going. I was asking, like, if you're going into a business that's been run traditionally without the automation, without the tech, would that be your first step to come in and, that's where I guess a process audit would be useful. Say, okay, like your example with Calendly, there's other processes that could be automated to make that business run smoother so it doesn't seem so much like you're just buying a job.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a good example. Like, the beverage industry, imagine if you bought a microbrewer that, had a canning station, but they did everything by hand, right? They didn't do any automation and they never used co-packers for any of the other things that they're doing. Well, great. There's a little bit of a process that you could do that you could, implement some automation or some more advanced technology of what was in the past and incorporate that in. And now I think with the way that they've done canning lines and set that up, it's becoming more affordable. Even smaller businesses can even look at doing it themselves.
Yes. A lot of smaller businesses are actually owning that vertical at this point.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And then if you have that, then usually you have excess capacity. So then sell that excess capacity to other folks.
And now a word from our sponsors. Are you ready to try something refreshingly different? Bluebird Hard Water is not your typical beverage. It's a clean, non-carbonated alcoholic water crafted with simple, pure ingredients, no preservatives, no added fluff. Just quality you can taste without the fog, the bloat, or the regret. Whether at the beach, on the golf course, or just relaxing at home, Bluebird Hard Water is a perfect companion for your active lifestyle. Check out Bluebird Hard Water today at bluebirdhardwater.com to find out more about their story and where you can grab a can. The link is in the show notes, so don't miss it. Bluebird Hard Water, keeping it simple, clean, and refreshing every time. Protecting the look, feel, and identity of your product is crucial, And that's where James Gorley can help. As an expert intellectual property attorney at Karstens, Allen & Gorley, James knows that trademarks are essential for legally protecting your brand, name, logo, and packaging design. This ensures no one can imitate your identity or piggyback on your success. With James Gorley guiding you, you'll safeguard the goodwill you've built with your customers and avoid confusion in the marketplace. Don't leave your brand vulnerable. Work with James Gorley to protect your business today. Visit CageLaw, that's CAGlaw.com, to learn more. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. Whether it be the beverage industry or other related industries, you see when you come into helping someone, what's some of the first challenges, the most common ones you see?
So the first one I usually see is when I meet a CEO and they're like, oh my gosh, my team isn't doing what they're supposed to. We have processes, nobody's listening to me and everybody's doing their own thing. This is usually where I get myself maybe fired from the initial lead or thought, but it's like, dude, you've got a culture problem. Like you're the leader. You've set the ground rules and expectations of how things run or work, and you've allowed this to happen. So if they can say, yes, I did. Now, how do we fix it? Great. I can work with you. When they're like, no, you don't understand. And they just go off the rails. I'm like, okay, you know what?
Yes.
Let me refer you to somebody else that will help you. But I think, so once they recognize it, they're the ones that kind of set the situation to be what it is. And then they're ready to fix it. I think that's what I find first. And that's where I start, because
That's a great place.
yeah, one of my clients said, a stinky fish starts from the head. Like, I was like, okay.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, I've had some people like I've realized that the same thing is if the CEO or the owner or the main decision maker isn't able to adjust the way they do things, and they're always seen as the starter and the only starter, no wonder why your team isn't starting. So yeah.
Yeah. So I think, so there's that. And then the other one is that it always happens is, hey, do you have your processes documented? And people are like, oh yeah, we do. Great. Show me. And then it's usually crickets.
Oh boy.
Or they're spending like, an hour trying to find everything because it's on the Google Drive and then it's on Dropbox and it's here and it's an email and yeah.
Well, that's a great sign that they need your help. So that's excellent. So yeah, that's a great green flag for you. So do you have any, speaking of some of these, do you have any unique examples, stories you could tell about, I think you told the one about the Calendly, a business you've come into and they've really, it's really turned them around.
So one most recent is a business broker that I was working with. He had an Excel spreadsheet. It was like beautiful work of art. Like it had rows and columns and numbers, and it was very complicated. And basically that was his way of managing all of the different contracts that he had, all the different work, all the different stages, who was doing what. But it was very complicated and you had to scroll through it. It took a lot of time just to even navigate it to get to where you wanted to find the information. And so what we did was we created a master process of how he did his intake and how he did his follow through and project management. And essentially we got him into a project management system. It's Monday.com. Not every solution I'm going to give you is like, oh, here's the exact tool that you need.
Oh, it's the tools. Yes.
People have tools. Yeah. People have preferences. So anyway, we got him on Monday.com. We helped build a dashboard. So then his projects, now all the different data points that he needed were in kind of one screenshot. And then because he's using a project management system, every time there was updates or milestones were achieved, then different other actions would happen. And so we created some automations off of it. So anything that had to do with communication externally, he would just push a button and then the email would be sent out automatically. He wouldn't have to go physically open his Outlook, physically type it up. And so between that and the project management of him updating his worksheet to figure out where he was, since the system automatically did it every time information came in, we were able to save him a ton of time. How much time? He was about 8 to 16 hours every other week of updating the spreadsheet and doing all of this work, depending on how much activity happened. So essentially, we bought him back probably about 40 hours a month time by putting his whole process into a right system, creating the dashboards for him, and creating some base level automations that did things like, when you send off a request for documents or send something out to somebody else and then they don't get it to you, and then you have to think of it or remind yourself, So we send out automatic reminders. So until that gets turned in, his system is kicking out reminders to the people. And so then he doesn't have to remember to send out the reminders. Those are actually being generated.
That's great. That's great. And obviously you're saving him 40 hours. That's the time he can use to spend in front of people. Because I think that's really how a broker sells well, as they are a people person with the person in the business that they're either, helping buy or sell. Yeah. And I think that's where they need to be.
I think the other half of the time he's using to just spend time with his family and just enjoy his weekends. Too. So
yeah, freedom to how you want to spend it. I guess that's probably the better way to put it. All right. So if there's one thing someone could do right now to improve or prepare their systems, their processes, what would that be?
Document it, write it down, and then put it in a place that's easy to find.
Okay.
A lot of I know this deal a lot with beverage folks. So, they have regulatory compliance and they have food standards. So I'm sure documentation is something they have or they've done. Doing it because you have to do it is one way. Doing it because it's a good thing to do is another thing. So I would say those have to do's, get those done, but then also look at, how do you greet people? How do you follow up with suppliers and vendors? How do you, all of those components, get those processes operationalized and get those documented? That's going to help you to create a business that's could potentially sell or have an exit at some point.
Okay. And what's the best way, would you say, to store that documentation? I know people put them in giant 3-ring binders. Some people just have it online. Yeah. I'm assuming the best way to access it would be the best way to store it. So how is that? What do you see?
Well, I'm still a little analog in a digital age. Not that I'm a Luddite or anything, but I still have paper documents and I still track things with checklists and whatnot. So I would say the core documentation should be in one place. So I told you, I walk into a place, it's oh, where's this documented? Oh, we've got this here and this here and this here. No, put that all in one place. I've seen people do build outs in Notion. It's a great system. For us, our SOPs are in ClickUp because it's easy to access. And then the checklists and things, I have one client that they have checklists. And so then they'll print those out and have those at people's workstation because, something let's say that you do it, I don't know, once a day and it's a whole series of things you need to do, then just have a checklist and then that way nothing gets missed.
Okay, great. So just at different places, just depending on the importance. So not all in one location, but
all the core documents in one place and then specific task ones where they should be.
Perfect. Okay. That's a great example. I was just wondering because some people may just keep everything in a 3-ring binder, just go check the binder and then you're lost for an hour looking for this one checklist you need.
Well, one of my clients was listen, SOPs are great, but if they can't be found within 30 seconds, then they're useless.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I totally agree. And also I like having people visualize their SOP before they create their SOP.
Yeah.
And I think you're along the same lines.
Yeah. It's do it a few times before you document it. And then, I've had people come up to me and ask oh, I need to do SOPs. I'm okay, well, that's the final product. Where's everything?
Where's all the pieces?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'll ask what the meta process is. And they're oh, I don't know. Well, let's work on the meta first before you spend an hour, documenting how to draw a comma on your, whatever. You don't need an SOP for that.
Yes, absolutely. Because when you have it that way, you have if you have a team, they can see everything, they access everything at the same time, not one point at a time. And that's where you're going to find your optimizations.
Yeah. I mean, if you get a chance, anyone listening on my website, check out about the process maps that I have on there. You can kind of see why there's different departments, there's different steps and how they interact. And so having that visual is extremely helpful.
You even have your services and offerings put into a process map, which I think is brilliant. I love that. That was really neat. So check his, I think it's on your about page or something, but that is really neat. That is a neat way of showing it, just for different ideas. If anyone wants to steal that idea, it's a neat way to do it. I've never seen anyone else do that. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, I'm glad to inspire other people with whatever I produce. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So I have 2 more questions, and this one's kind of a fun one. Actually, this one's kind of a fun one. What's your favorite beverage?
Favorite beverage? Oh my gosh. Okay. Totally prepared for this one. So non-alcoholic favorite beverage is kombucha.
Okay.
And then mixed drink, love an old fashioned.
Ooh, okay.
And then my favorite beer right now is New Belgium's 1554. It's like kind of full Belgium, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's caramely and it's got really nice flavor notes.
All right. Well, great. That's great. I'll have to look into that one. So, and also another question is, do you have any events, promotions, or anything for our listeners?
Events, promotions. I do have on my website, which we can put in the show notes if we want to link it. So normally I do a free 30-minute, let's just chat. Let me see if I can help.
Mm-hmm. Good
connection. And then for anyone listening to the podcast, if they want, I'll give them a free hour. So then, bring your questions. If you have a whole checklist of things, I'll make as much use of the hour as we can. And if we meet, and then if you need additional things, I have other resources I can give people. But I like to talk to people before I just hand them stuff usually.
I totally agree. So, an hour is a great amount of time. I'll put that link you offered me in the show notes if you want to talk to Joshua about your processes, your optimizations. Go ahead, check that out, and have a full hour with him instead of a typical 30 minutes, and maybe you can solve a few problems on the way.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. All right, Joshua, this has been a great interview. I've kind of geeked out on this. This is, close to my heart of things I've tried to help out people with in their processes and innovation. So I really, really appreciate you being on the show and taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, Matthew, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information. And connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.